Hello everyone, this is the TheQuickRedFox here, and just an update on my setup and configuration, part 2 of my Bobcat 300 Helium miner. So as with any type of new technology installation, there's always going to be issues and hiccups, and lo and behold, this was no different. So my first issue really came around shipping. So I ordered my Bobcat late November, and after about 6 weeks after I ordered it, I received confirmation that this would be delivered on and around January 11th, roughly about 50 days from my order. This I ordered it from distributor out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, called heliumdeploy.io. It was the best and most responsive, best turnaround times and delivery times. So essentially, that's why I ordered from those. I've heard many reports of people ordering their helium miner and waiting around for 6, 8, 9, 10 months, and still haven't received it. So although there was about a 50-day gap in between the time I ordered it to the time I received it, this was acceptable, pretty much due to the um, shortage of miners and shipping and supply chain issues as well. So wasn't happy about it, but what can you do? And it was only 50 days at the same time. So when I ordered this, I actually ordered the actual miner itself, as well as a 6 dBi antenna upgrade. Unfortunately, they both were not shipped at the same time, so essentially I received my Bobcat miner about a week before my 6 dBi antenna. Originally, I was planning on setting everything up at the same time in my attic, just do one installation and get everything up and running and just do it at one shot. But unfortunately, due to the week delays and just the way things turned out, this didn't necessarily happen. So this is essentially how I planned on setting up my miner, my installation. So essentially, all my internet and my telecommunication stuff comes into my basement. So as you see there, you got the internet coming in, the purple line goes to the router, goes through a dedicated Helium network. I have a separate network within my house that only has Helium, the Helium miner connected to it, and through a wired Ethernet connection. My intent was to use Powerline networking. I've never used this before. It actually worked out pretty good, but essentially the first issue I had was when I had my Powerline networking plugged in the basement. The throughput and the speed of the connectivity of the Powerline network was absolutely horrible. It was about a quarter of what it should have been. Me not having used Powerline networking before, I wasn't sure if this was just a limitation. I heard that it was slower than traditional networking, obviously, but I've never tried it myself. So the Powerline networking was essentially providing Ethernet and networking capabilities over existing wiring infrastructure within your house, like the copper wires basically that goes to all your outlets. Once the power line networking was in the second floor, essentially I wanted to run a Ethernet cable into my attic, have the miner sitting up there, and then having the helium antenna hooked up over an antenna cable up in the attic. So after playing around with the power line networking, for some reason I have no idea what it was basically I just changed the outlet that it was connected to. So when I moved the helium dedicated helium network up to the second floor and then used an outlet on the second floor, that basically made everything work fantastically, and the power line networking was working, basically getting a full internet speeds with that type of connection. So just a little bit of a background on this. So in between my basement and my main floor, these do it is wired for Ethernet jacks. So I do have wired internet on those two main floors. So it was pretty easy for me to move my dedicated helium network up to the main floor and then run the power line networking off there. So not much of an issue, just rather confusing why it would work like that. I'm not sure if it has anything to do with, for example, splits in the wires or the circuit breaker or the circuit panel. No idea. But either way, just playing around with a couple outlets on my main floor, I found that addressed a problem fairly quickly, fairly easily as well. My next issue was I ordered the wrong power over Ethernet cables. So your power over Ethernet has two parts. One's the injector, where it basically injects the electricity into the Ethernet cable, and then on the other end, it's the splitter. So the splitter would essentially split the connection, so you pulling your networking capabilities off of your power capabilities. And when I ordered this, I ordered a 1 amp PoE splitter. And lo and behold, when I connected it, nothing happened. So after a little bit of research and playing around and having a look, I found that I actually needed a 2 amp PoE splitter. So, of course, what do? Consult Amazon. So in the meantime, I got my miner hooked up. Here's kind of how it looks in the corner. Essentially, I just had a little table. I ordered a waterproof or weatherproof box to put everything in. And there's the stock 4 dBi antenna for the Bobcat miner. So I was pretty sure that this would give not good results. It is by a window. It is in the second floor. It's as high as I can get it. But I got two main obstructions in this. One is a metal awning. The old style. My house is over 100 years old, and these awnings and the siding are about 60 years old. So the style back in the day. So I have this metal awning which basically covers half the window. Personally, I don't like it, and it's coming down eventually. But unfortunately, for this time, I can't go outside, do this in the middle of winter. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to deal with it. But having a metal object that close to the antenna, I was pretty sure that it was going to give kind of unexpected or undesirable results. The second issue I realized once I started hooking everything up and having a look around this area a little closer, the screening that's actually in my window is a steel screen as well. So I knew it was there, but it didn't click in. So yeah, yet again, we have another metal object or metal obstruction that's going to affect the antenna signal, both transmit and receive, going through that. Um, so as you can see, so here's essentially where I am. I'm the white dot on this little map here, and where that metal awning in is, and where that window with the steel screen. Yeah, lo and behold, I would get absolutely nothing out of that way. No witnesses, nobody hearing my beacons or seeing my beacons. It's like a whole dead spot in my transmission. So, as expected, but my plan was to obviously move that from the second floor into the attic. And still waiting on the antenna and whatnot. So, yeah, I'm just sitting around, letting my miner sink, playing with it a bit, trying to get whatever kind of profit and HNT profit that I can until I can actually move these things into the attic. So while I was playing around, I tried a couple other things. So I had this essentially little stand in the corner. So my goal was to try to get that antenna above that metal awning and on top of that window, try to kind of broadcast more. So yeah, I tried a few different things like that, different boxes to lift it up, or kind of little solutions to kind of get around and see what was actually what would actually be any bit better. Believe it or not, this was better. I pulled this was maybe 6 feet away from the window, so I'm in the house a little more, and I'm also probably, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 feet higher. And so yeah, not that it's completely going to be able to go around that awning or through that screen, but it certainly did help. So when I first hooked it up and I was playing around with it, um, yeah, I didn't really get a snapshot of the earnings when the 4 dBi was in the attic, but essentially when I first started, right here is where I was playing around with the 4 dBi antenna. Now this high bar right here, that was almost a $10 USD profit in one day, which was pretty much a little above what I was actually expecting in terms of my profit. So I was getting a little excited and a little kind of happy to, good, this is going to work, and this is actually going to work as I planned. But as you can see, pretty much after this date, I installed the 6 dBi antenna, and you can just see from going above network average to sometimes fairly below to network average as well. So, and this is with the 6 dBi, 6 dBi antenna as well. So the 6 dBi antenna arrives. So essentially here it is. The antenna is 85 centimeters in length, so fairly long. When I got the antenna, it was getting late in the day. I didn't want to monkey around in the attic, so I just kind of rigged it up like this. Got a box, got a little nightstand, whatever you want to call it. This here is actually just a Christmas tree stand that I made with a 4x4 and a couple 2x4s. Just drilled a hole in there, a little piece of doweling to kind of stick up. And right here, it's just a bunch of pieces of dowel duct taped together and wrapped around the U-bolts that come with the antenna mount. There's a closer shot. Yeah, like I mentioned kind of before. Essentially nothing special. Like it was just some stuff I had laying around. Just kind of made it work. I just needed something that was firm and strong that would actually just hold that antenna and hold it like up and straight as best it can. So yeah, there's kind of the U-bolts and the bracket up in here. Yeah, the antenna sits in there. A couple screws kind of hold that and kind of clamps it to the rest of the bracket. And just on the U-bolt size, I believe that was a 2-inch U-bolt, which I just used whatever I could find to basically make filler, which was just scrap pieces of doweling. Yeah, and then the duct tape around it to kind of hold it in place. And then down here, it just kind of goes into a hole I drilled into the antennas or the Christmas tree stand. So now that we have everything that's ordered, now it's time to move everything into the attic. So here's a picture of my attic. Yeah, you can see up here. There's the Christmas tree stand. It's actually in the floor, basically sitting on top of the drywall of the roof below or the ceiling below. I had to do it that way because when I ordered this, I didn't think about the height in the attic, and I probably got about 93 centimeters height in the attic from where this piece of wood is, for example, to the highest peak in the peak. And the antenna is 85, so I only had like 10 centimeters kind of to play with and shimmy around. So moving the Christmas tree stand with the antenna on top of this, where I would prefer it instead of being right on the drywall below. But yeah, unfortunately, I had to sit down there just because of lack of space. Luckily, I got it in. It was straight up, and then I had a 3-meter long antenna cable that basically ran into the house. Being being around wintertime up here in Canada, it does get pretty cold, so I was a little weary and concerned about putting my brand new miner into the attic as well. But yeah, it was, I don't know, some days it was minus 25, minus 30 in the morning. Not something I wanted to try with the expensive helium miner that basically I've only had for about a week or two by at this point. So this is how I rigged it up. So here's the antenna cable coming down. It's mounting into the back of the Bobcat miner. I used the mounting brackets on the miner to mount it to the wall, so it sits snug up there very well. And then here's the power over Ethernet, and my Ethernet cable just runs along these plastic clips just to kind of keep the cable out of sight, out of mind. And it actually turned out very well. This is a side of the room that it's in that you don't necessarily see. It's not really a common area where you hang out or anything like that. So when you're in the other side of the room where the darker blue is, all this is completely out of sight. You cannot see it. So pretty good installation, if I do say so myself. I'm pretty proud. Everything's clean, out of the way. Can't see it. And it sits there nicely and just chugs away. So after a few weeks of monitoring the Bobcat in terms of like operating temperature and yeah, just kind of performance, I decided to actually move the miner into the attic. So I was getting more comfortable with the temperature and the operating temperature and getting it up there. And I also wanted to remove and put in a shorter piece of that antenna cable, not the 10 feet or 3 meter that I had. I wanted to get back down to like a 3 meter cable and have the miner as close to the antenna as possible. Yeah, I previously didn't do this when I first got it in January. Canada's pretty cold, but the miner was holding its own and still well within operating temperature. So essentially what I did was I put it in a weatherproof box and I just wrapped it in a small little blanket just to kind of shelter any additional cold wind blowing through my attic kind of idea. And in doing this, the Bobcat maintains a good 30 degrees Celsius operating temperature inside that weatherproof box, even when it's about minus 20 degrees Celsius below outside. So here's essentially how it looks without with the miner now in the attic. So this was obviously taken before I actually had the mount up, but yeah, this is how I had it. So cable runs right up, nothing else hanging down. This is actually working pretty well. This is what I still have set up in the attic. The miner is as close to the antenna as possible. The miner always is operating in safe operating temperature. The cables are still out of the way. They're hung up well. Yeah, and barely seen and barely noticeable. So now after 30 days. So after 30 days, I swapped the Bobcat with the stock antenna a couple times. I noticed the 6 dBi antenna wasn't really, it was performing below network average. And based on what I saw in those handful of days with the 4 dBi when I first got it installed, I don't think that antenna in the attic is the best for whatever purposes. I'm not sure if it's too tight of an area, too close of an area. Like the slopes of the roof are right there. The antenna can't breathe. I'm not sure. At the same time, snow on the roof, ice. I don't know if it's just weather conditions at this time, but I overall at this time until I can get the 6 dBi outside, I wasn't overly impressed with this performance of the 6 dBi. So roughly about halfway through, I took the 6 dBi off. I put the 4 dBi back on, and yeah, just chugging along basically at network average. So now that I've seen what the Bobcat can do with the both the stock antenna and with an upgrade kind of an antenna, yeah, I need to do some more enhancements to really take advantage of the miner and what it can do essentially. So I'm kind of in an interesting situation where I live. For example, down here, which is about like from here to basically these red lines, that's about roughly a kilometer, let's say, maybe a kilometer and a half. But this essentially is like a 100-meter cliff. So yeah, and basically straight up solid rock. So I have a two-story house below this kind of cliff. I rarely get anything up here in this red area. I might get one or two, which are typically at the edge. What I'm assuming are close to the edge, but essentially, yeah, anything up here in the red, I have no. There's no way I'm ever gonna see anything up here, up on the mountain we call it. Not necessarily a mountain, but for argument's sake. So, and at the same time, I live at the end of a lake, a big lake. So my only options are to shoot this way on the left side of the lake, come up here on the side. Up here, transmit scales are quite low, earnings are quite low. Anything that kind of comes in this area is, if you can get enough like witnesses and capture enough beacons, kind of thing, you should do okay. I'm expecting, but I've heard from other people in Facebook or Discord communities for Helium who live in or are close to the area. Basically, I've said this, like anything on that kind of left side of the lake, it's like, yeah, you might get stuff, but you're not going to be rolling in the HNT kind of idea. So my other option is to come down along this strip between the lake and the edge of the mountain, the edge of the cliff here. So there's, and this is a transmit scale map. So once we kind of get outside of the big city here where I live, and into kind of the smaller communities and a little more rural kind of idea, there's less miners, but the transmit scales are higher. And just by looking around at the miners that are working in this area, they are more profitable. So I'm hoping that I can kind of shoot something out this way, like a Yagi kind of idea, to collect and only focus on this area. So, oh, sorry there. Yeah, so my first option is so to come up here in direction one, something I'm thinking about is if I'm going to focus on this direction, I'm going to want to use a directional antenna, something like a panel. So here's the 12 dBi panel antenna from Laird. I was looking at it. It was going to cost roughly $120, maybe tax, maybe 150 with tax and shipping. And that would capture most of the stuff in this area. But again, it's I don't know, 150 bucks for profit or for earnings that aren't necessarily going to be the greatest. So I've had comments. I've heard comments about the area as well as the antenna. So kind of up in the air on what to do. Now, if I focus on my other option, my other direction, direction two, I'd like to use something like a Yagi. Yagi antenna looks like the blow antenna here, pretty much like an old TV aerial TV antenna kind of style. Just shoots in one direction, kind of a narrow band. So that's what I'm looking for to shoot down this way. I would guess from the edge of the lake to the edge of the escarpment or the edge of the mountain here might be roughly maybe 5 kilometers, if that. So it's not the longest or not the widest stretch of land, and that mountain edge of that cliff just kind of runs straight line and follows the lake as well. So this is kind of what I'm looking at, and I'd prefer to try direction number two in the first place or first. So in summary, uh, despite what people are saying, I still think helium mining is profitable. In my case, I'm making about half the earnings I was expected based on all my prior calculations and stuff. But all that means is my return on investment is now closer to 8 to 10 months instead of the 5 to 6 I originally estimated. When the weather's warmer, I plan to move the antenna outside, try to improve and try the different antennas that I've collected, and basically see which one, basically repeat the process and see which one works best outside. Now that the weather is also getting better, I'm seeing my earnings on a nice, warm, sunny day. I get better earnings and I mine more HNT during the day. So I'm not sure if that has any impact on the results I'm seeing. I'm sure there is, but either way, things are starting to look better. So I'm starting to get a little more pleased. So, and as I was testing this out in the winter in Canada in January, February, yeah, I'm pretty sure my earnings were impacted. Ice on the roof, cold, damp days. I'm by the lake, so the air is kind of pretty heavy, and yeah, a lot of moisture in the area. So, yeah, I'm sure that has something to do with it as well. But as I was testing this out in the winter in Canada in January and February, I believe my earnings were impacted as I had the antenna in the attic and a lot of snow and ice on my roof. So, I think that significantly impacted my performance and the daily profit of HNT or the daily mining of HNT. But now that the weather's getting nicer again, I hope things will improve. So that's it, everyone. I appreciate your time. Thank you. Please remember to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also, feel free to check out our socials on Facebook as well as Twitter. And you can always check us out on our website at www.thequickredfox.ca. Thank you very much.